afternoon, welcome to UK Column News. It is the 12th of February 2015 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Mike Robinson and Nick are here in Plymouth.
Afternoon.
Hello.
How's the weather?
Don't know, it's quite mild I think here.
Okay.
Any reports? I think we're going to start with Melanie and
yes,
what's been going on. Okay, so Melanie is back in Peterborough Prison, the private Sodexo prison where she was before, and according to her private bail company, she has not broken any conditions. But they did inform her legal representative that the police have told them that additional offences have been committed. But as we have just been discussing, there has been no due process.
No due process, and the bail company saying that no bail conditions have been breached. So it's a bit unclear how Melanie has ended up in prison, but I'm sure more details
to follow. And when Brian's back tomorrow, I'm sure he will give further information. Okay,
moving on to the main topic of today, which of course is war. Well, it's a done deal for what it's worth. The immediate heat has been taken out of this situation over Ukraine, but as we're going to see, it's not the end of it. So an agreement was reached in Minsk after 17 hours of negotiations, including ceasefire to begin on the 15th of February, which I believe is Sunday. Heavy weapons are going to be pulled out. All prisoners are going to be released. And Poroshenko said that Ukraine would establish what he said was control of the international border by the end of the year. So Mrs. Merkel, well, she was there, of course, and she said that there's now a glimmer of hope, although big hurdles remain, according to her. And Putin said to Russian television that it wasn't the best night for him, but it certainly was a good morning. So perhaps something positive to be taken out of there. However, let's put this in a bit of perspective. Leading up to the Minsk conference, the Kremlin put out a report which said that because Putin had been speaking to Obama, and he said that they said that Vladimir Putin provided an extensive assessment of the situation during the telephone call in southeast Ukraine, stressing the most recent Russian proposals, which were discussed in the context of preparing for the meeting in Minsk. The presidents of Russia and the United States, according to the Kremlin, highlighted the importance of resolving the domestic Ukrainian crisis via political dialogue with an immediate cessation of bloodshed, ensuring the lawful rights and interests of residents of all regions of the Ukraine without exception, including the southeast. Well, that was the Kremlin's take on it. The White House had something slightly different to say. They said that President Obama underscored the rising human toil of the fighting and underscored the importance of President Putin seizing the opportunity presented by the ongoing discussions between Russia, France, Germany and Ukraine to reach a peaceful resolution. The President emphasized the importance of reaching and implementing a negotiated settlement underpinned by the commitments in the Minsk Agreement. However, if Russia continues aggressive actions in Ukraine, including the sending of troops, weapons and financing to support the separatists, the cost for Russia will rise. So,
oh dear.
So threats, but and it seems that they say that Putin has to stop arming on one side, but they are planning to arm on the other.
Yeah, exactly. But an article that was released yesterday on Russia Today website, they are covering an interview with Obama and Vox. And in the interview, Obama said the UN and IMF have helped stabilise the world. He went on to say the US is the strongest military in the world and that occasionally it would have to twist arms of countries that won't do what they need them to do. And if it weren't for the various economic or diplomatic or in some cases military leverage that America has, they didn't have the dose of realism and nothing else would get done either. He then discussed the disorder coming from failed states and the threat from terrorist organisations were one of the biggest challenges facing the international community at this time.
So, but pushing war.
Absolutely,
war rhetoric,
100,
right?
yeah.
And that was followed up then with him going to Congress to ask for money to prosecute war against Islamic State.
Yeah, so Barry went to Congress yesterday afternoon to get authorisation to use military force against ISIS, even though he's been bombing ISIS for the last 6 months. And apparently the request is being reviewed and they will be taking advice from military commanders, the Congress.
Okay, well, as is highlighted in the Washington Post, on February the 9th, a couple of days old, I'm afraid. This is Walter Pincus, who is really highlighting how much money the United States is spending on shall we call, defence. Of course, it's not defence. And what in particular they are spending it on. And he's particularly concerned because they're spending it on nuclear weapons. So he's saying, he's pointing out billions of dollars of Obama's 2016 budget request to upgrade the B-61 bomb, the W-80 warhead, new cruise missiles, numerous other things in the nuclear arsenal. But what's really concerning him is the millions being spent on hardening Air Force and Navy communications so they can survive a nuclear strike. The United States shouldn't spend billions more in the expectation that deterrence will fail, he says. It only helps create the impression that this country is preparing for nuclear war and might strike first. Well, that's what he says.
Can I just, very quickly, Obama has urged that Cameron starts spending more on defence and military, even though we're collapsing it.
Well, absolutely, because what he said was that if Cameron cuts back the defence budget in this country any further, that might set a dangerous precedent for other NATO partners, and Obama particularly concerned that defence budgets are not cut at this point.
Exactly.
Of course, the Russian take on this is absolutely clear and always has been, and they're stating quite clearly that any arming, in the Moscow Times here, any arming of Ukraine by the West would be seen as an act of war, and I suppose that's understandable, bearing in mind the recent further NATO expansion. Now, the Darwin Awards, we all know the Darwin Awards are given to those who kill themselves in the most stupid way, and thus removing themselves from the gene pool. So this must be a candidate. This is Foreign Policy magazine. Now, Foreign Policy magazine, originally set up by Samuel Huntington of the Council of Foreign Relations, the man who behind the Clash of Civilizations policy. And just a fantastic article here, smoking Putin out of his cave. Well, clearly an attempt to link Putin with bin Laden as being a bin Laden type figure here in the headline. And then the subhead is, will Putin escalate if Washington arms Ukraine? Yes, but it's the only way to bring his covert war into the open where it belongs. And he goes on to say that after leading thinkers from 3 think tanks and the Secretary of Defense nominee Ashley Carter advocating, in Carter's case, hinting at providing lethal weapons, and he concludes by saying, that is why the time has come to take risks and why Barack Obama must introduce military force, however limited, into a dynamic that affects more than just Ukraine, not because these steps will necessarily deter Vladimir Putin, but because it steels America and our allies, generates a new unity around the reality that today's Kremlin and sends a clear signal to Moscow that we have bent and acquiesced for long enough, that the period of testing is over, and that Washington will resist, not submit. Unbelievable war drums being banged.
Shocking.
From the. So who is this guy? Well, here he is. He is a visiting fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, a member of the Defense Policy Board, a member of the American Council in Germany, and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. So. A globalist player, absolute. It's just incredible the strength of the rhetoric in that article, and I strongly recommend that people go and have a read at it. Now, in the meantime, then, yes, Christine Lagarde has announced that Kiev has agreed to $17.5 billion bailout package. So she's saying $17.5 billion over a 4-year period, and that is on top of, that makes the total bailout package for the Ukraine $40 billion. She says that the program is not yet approved by the Governing Council of Ukraine. She hopes it'll be done by the end of February. The new 4-year arrangement would support immediate economic stabilization in Ukraine, as well as a set of bold policy reforms. So what she's really highlighting here is that Ukraine now becomes a tool of the Western banking system. And this money is really a bribe for being that tool of the Western banking system. Well, of course, in Greece, it's the same story because it's widely understood that Greek financial situation could bring the whole financial system down because of exposure to Greek debt derivatives. Greece is perhaps taking advantage of that, but nonetheless, the threat here is that unless Europe wises up with regard to helping Greece out, because Greece does not want to get involved in a similar IMF-type troika arrangement that the Ukraine is in at this point. So the new government saying really either support us in what we're asking for, or we might have to go and talk to Russia and China. So a pretty stark threat. But at the end of the day, it's this whole Russia-China thing which is really the cause of the war drums being beaten at the moment. Yes. Okay, moving on.
Okay, home front. Chief Constable Stephen Kavanagh of Essex Police has vowed to set things right after the IPCC say they were investigating the conduct of 5 officers in relation to child abuse, and a second investigation has started over the way Essex Police responded to reports of child exploitation. Approximately 30 child abuse investigations are under investigation, where it shows police failure in safeguarding children, delay in arresting suspects, and cases not being referred to the CPS. That sounds very familiar, but there he is. Chief Constable Stephen Kavanagh has vowed to get things straight and apologises for all the errors that Essex Police have made.
Now, the latest UK column newspaper, which is due out imminently, is covering how the institutions are failing to protect children, among other things. And we're drawing some conclusions about why that might be and what happens when you get a certain type of person into a position of authority, and when those people in positions of authority start working together because they believe they're working to some kind of ideology. Look forward to that hitting the streets in the next day or two.
All ahead of the conference, and there's going to be a grand jury. If you haven't heard about what's going on the 27th of February to the 1st of March, it is the UK Column BCG conference in Telford. Tickets are available on the BritishConstitutionGroup.com website, and there's going to be many speakers: Ian Puddick, Michael Doherty, confirmed, Guy Taylor, and many more. So just keep an eye on the BCG website for more info on that. Okay, so the Mail are reporting that so far £9 million has been spent on the hunt for missing Madeleine McCann, and that £16,000 was spent on flights to and from Portugal. The last time they went to follow a non-existent lead, and 8-day searching cost around $15,000 in flights. Operation Grange, that Cameron set up in 2011, had a budget of $5 million. It has now well exceeded that. The Met have said that 37 members of staff are being used still in the hunt for Madeleine McCann. And in the comment section, I found this very interesting. I'm very surprised to see how many people thought it was becoming a waste of money. And what about the thousands of children that went missing each week here in the UK? One comment even, it's on here actually, one comment even said, what about the children of Rotherham? And if you haven't seen the video done by Richard D. Hall called The True Story of Madeleine McCann, you can find it on YouTube, and I urge viewers to watch it, and especially part 4, very interesting.
Okay. So this morning, David Cameron and George Osborne, hopefully he was sober. David Cameron and George Osborne were launching their long-term economic disaster in to the media with a view to the general election. Typically, they chose a factory to stage it from, implying that they're promoting manufacturing in this country when, in fact, quite the opposite is the case. Now, ironically, around the same time they were doing this, this was being tweeted out from number 10 Gov. Well, they're presenting this as a massive success to 760,000 more small businesses than in 2010. Yet, as we reported a few days ago, Tax Research UK pointing out that new data shows that 77% of these small business owners are actually living in what's at least notionally called poverty. So they were highlighting a table from the Office for National Statistics, and they're saying that the first thing that stands out on this table is that 5.5 million people received income from self-employment, but 1.7 million of those were also employed by someone else. So self-employment is not a full-time situation for them. It's also notable from this table that 900,000 or so are in receipt of some kind of pension, so they're getting a pension and they're requiring to be self-employed as well in order to maintain some kind of living income. So what does that tell us? It tells us that people are struggling to live, making a living in present circumstances, and need to find other ways to make ends meet. So the suggestion by Cameron in his tweet this morning that the number of people that are self-employed as a success is absolute nonsense. So, I mean, just to highlight this is the, we showed this the other day as well, but this is the percentage of people in the country that are self-employed, and you can see how it has really started to ramp up in the last 18 months in particular.
Yeah, I mean, the reason is because if people haven't got a job in 3 months, they've got to go and do something that they probably don't want to do, and the only way to kind of get round that, to pursue their dreams, is to go self-employed.
Well, the key point is that there are no jobs
yeah, exactly, of course, exactly,
shelf-stacking
yeah.
and coffee-serving jobs at the moment. So for Cameron to launch his press statement from a factory, one of the few that are left, is kind of ironic. But anyway, moving on then. Interesting thing, because the Rainbow Coalition, of course, in the works for the post-general election. That's if Nick Clegg ever leaves as Prime Minister once he gets the job post the election. If you remember Brian pointing out that he is going to be the interim Prime Minister while all the negotiations happen over who's going to form the coalition. Well, Nigel Farage here saying quite simply that he will not sit in a coalition with any of the three main parties. So he wrote in the Telegraph that UKIP could prop up a government by entering into what he described as a confidence and supply agreement with one of the parties, but only if they agree to hold an immediate in-out referendum on Britain's membership of the EU. And he also uses the article to discuss other things like tuition fees and so on. But that was the main point. So as Lou has just mentioned, the BCG UKC conference. You can, if you are a member of the British Constitution Group of the UK column, please order your tickets through those respective websites. Please make sure you're logged in first. But if you're not a member of the BCG or the UK column, you can get your tickets from events.gb.com. As Lou said, 27th to the 1st of March, 27th Feb, 1st of March in Telford, Shropshire. It is really important that you're there. There's so much going on. The information which is going to be presented, particularly with regard to the grand jury, is spectacular. But we will also be organising people there with a view to getting involved in the election process. And exactly what that means we'll keep until the conference. But really vital that everybody that can be there is there. And if you can't be there for whatever reason, then please make sure that somebody else is there in your place.
Absolutely.
Lou, what is going on?
You couldn't make this up, could you? Digital collars are going to be put on animals in rural Wales to track them. Sensors are going to be put in soil to warn of erosion, and devices across riverbanks to alert of flood risk. 171,000 has been given to Lancaster University to see if the Internet of Things can be accessed in rural areas. Sheep are due to be tagged with electronic collars to monitor their movements and understand their habits. But these collars can also be...
I can't let you go past that. Sorry, so read that bit out again.
Electric collars are being fitted to sheep to monitor movements and understand their habits.
I mean, these are not sperm whales that travel halfway across the world and people struggle to track. This is sheep in a field.
I know. But where these collars are then going to be able to be used as Wi-Fi access points. So if you're travelling around rural Wales and you've got sheep nearby, you just need to drive closer to the sheep and you'll be able to get your Wi-Fi access.
Excellent.
I actually had to send this to Pippa King, because we talk a lot about this Internet of Things. And
Cisco, by the way, is now calling it the Internet of Everything.
Oh,
and
right,
this really represents the Internet of everything, doesn't it?
It really does.
There's no sort of discernment about what you're going to connect to the Internet. It's just connect anything you can possibly connect to.
I feel sorry for the poor little things. They're going to have their brains fried. Little things. Okay, here we go. 1984. Hooray to the Daily Mail for highlighting that we are dangerously close to George Orwell's 1984. We've covered the voice recognition of Samsung TVs that now hold your conversations and they go on in your living room and how they get passed to third parties whilst you're watching TV. But we now know that it's not just the TVs. Xboxes can now listen in when you've got voice-activated games being played. Microsoft say they store the data and state they can share it with affiliates and vendors. The Mail then go on to identify that this reality is becoming increasingly close to George Orwell's 1984. They go on to say facial recognition is a very dangerous tool. There is a sub-article reporting that 300,000 cars in the UK are actually fitted with these black boxes, which allows insurance companies to keep track of mileage and routes.
That's the least of your problems. They are now, particularly Nissan and others, are now selling cars with Google installed in the car.
Well, I was just about to say TomTom have been known to share data with the police to show where drivers are speeding, so the police in that way can put the speed cameras up so they can to grab people. So, I mean, it's
yesterday, by coincidence, I had cause to install an app on somebody's tablet,
right?
Which was a Canon printing app, and what it allowed you to do was to connect your tablet to a Wi-Fi printer and print images. And if you were printing an image, it would simply directly print to that to the printer without any intervention. However, if you wanted to print a document which was stored a PDF or a Word document stored on your tablet, that had to be sent to Canon for processing first. And what it said in the terms and conditions was, we have the right to retain this document and pass it on to third parties. I'm paraphrasing, of course, if we choose to do so. Of course, that app therefore did not get installed on that particular tablet. But there is a clear trend now, particularly with the use of cloud technology, where more and more processing is done in the cloud and less on your personal device. Therefore, information is being shared on an unprecedented rate, and you have unless you read every dotted I and crossed T of the terms and conditions, you really need to be careful about whether you want to do it or not.
I noticed I wanted to put a recorder on my phone, and the only recorder you can get to record the calls is if it goes via a third-party website and they keep it on a database.
That's for the iPhone?
Yeah.
There's your problem. Right, okay, moving on. On the same subject, really. This is quite an interesting little post on Prospect magazine, and I suggest people go and have a read at it. Saying capital punishment, why new technologies are hurting us from now. And they say it has been hailed as the biggest change in the way that the world works since the Industrial Revolution. While the latter allowed us to transcend the limitations of muscles, digital technologies are allegedly doing the same to the limitations of our minds. New technologies in manufacturing, the application of robotics, in the provision of both goods and services, 3D printing and artificial intelligence are not only developing rapidly, but also outstripping our expectations in many ways. They lead to greater efficiencies in everything from manufacturing to medicine, lower costs and prices, more sophisticated and diverse products. So what's not to like? In a nutshell, they are extraordinarily disruptive, as new technologies always are, but this time something is different. Instead of complementing or supplementing human endeavour, technology is displacing or substituting for it. In other words, instead of man exploiting machines and becoming more productive in new jobs as a result, machines are making us and many occupations permanently redundant. And the rest of the article focuses on jobs and more or less misses a fairly key point, because although everything they'd say is more or less correct, the main issue with this is what it's doing to our minds. Because it's not just jobs that are at risk, it is our minds. And if you look at the latest batch of advertisements for mobile devices on the television, sorry, Nick, just bring that one back up again, please. We've got remind me to buy some flowers, Google. It's all voice recognition. Yeah. Remind me to buy some flowers, Google. Tell me when I need to leave the house in order to arrive at that party on time, Siri, whatever it is, right? So we are effectively giving away our most basic skills to technology. So technology is not our servant. It is quite the opposite. The Telegraph here telling us that Finnish children will no longer be taught to write. Soon they're going to need to learn, they'll only be taught to type, but then eventually they won't even need to type, will they? Because everything will be voice activated. And of course the example of this, the obvious example of this is the GPS. We've all become reliant on it. We've stopped thinking about where we're going. How many stories have there been in the press over the years about people ending up in places they shouldn't be, driving into rivers and off cliffs and things like this, because they've stopped thinking and they rely on this technology.
And it was going to be thought the next thing is going to be thought, voice recognition first, and then it's going to be thought, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly where they're going. So extremely dangerous in my opinion.
Definitely.
Technology is a tool, like a knife. It can be used for positive and it can be used for negative. I think that the way that gadgets are going and the way that gadgets are being sold to people is an extremely dangerous situation. And of course, the more dumbed down we are, the less we are capable of thinking analytically about what the elites are doing, about what governments are doing, about what the economy should be doing, and the less capable we are of actually making a judgment about whether people are doing things in our interests or in somebody else's.
Exactly. Well done, well said.
So that's it.
That's it. Brian's back tomorrow. Just a thought for everybody. Brian did request that everybody gets to what you did last time when Melanie got in prison. Get on the phone, get writing, and start making a noise. She is back in prison, no due process. As far as the private bail company are concerned, she had not broken any bail conditions, but the police informed them that, the police informed the bail company that additional offences have been committed, and then the bail company...
So they allege.
So they allege, and then the bail company informed Mel's legal representative. So just keep your thoughts to Melanie and maybe pick up the phone and phone Sodexo Peterborough or the police to find out what the hell's going on. That's it.
Thanks. See you tomorrow.
Bye.